What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So I will be making schedule predictions for every single Power 5 team in college football this upcoming season. And I'll also do a subsequent conference standings video once I finish every team in a specific conference, just as a synopsis of all of my running schedule predictions. Those synopsis videos will be coming much later on into August. As we get closer to the start of the season, we are not too far away now, just a couple weeks out. But between now and then, I have to finish up all of the individual predictions. And so, yeah, I'm halfway through the Pac-12 right now, so let's go ahead and get into the UCLA schedule predictions. So some quick thoughts on the UCLA program as a whole heading into 2022, and this program is really intriguing, in large parts due to the head coach, Chip Kelly, who has a long history of dominance in the Pac-12. He's for Oregon back then before he stepped into the NFL, where he had some mixed results, to put it kindly. Which brought him back to college at UCLA, and honestly, the early signs there are really good for them. I think he has UCLA in a position to be a potential contender in the conference this year and beyond, really, in the years to come, as they are playing really sound football, and they have a lot of talent on the roster, which sets them up well this year and again going forward. Now, the defense is still very much questionable, and it's certainly a cause for concern. I expect them to be decent enough to keep them in games. They're not going to completely just give up a touchdown every single drive to put them in a position where they can't win. So I think they'll be decent enough, but they're certainly going to determine the ceiling for this team, in my opinion, as the offense under DTR at quarterback will be very good once again, and I'm very confident in the offense with Chip Kelly and DTR running the show. But if the defense can be even average to maybe even above average, which would be a huge improvement, they should be really good. They should have a shot to compete for things. Overall, if things work out well for them, and like I said, that defense takes the next step forward, this team could contend for the conference title, and depending on how things fall, maybe a little bit beyond that. So, now let's talk about some opponents who just don't have much of a chance to win, barring some level of catastrophe, and those teams are Bowling Green, Alabama State, and South Alabama. That's their first 3 games of the season. They are all cupcakes. They should win all 3 of them. The out-of-conference slate is incredibly easy for UCLA here. So, let's go ahead and get into the first game that we're going to talk about in Week 4, and that is at Colorado. And that's not an easy place to play. Colorado is a somewhat difficult place to go and play. But they're one of the worst teams in the conference, most likely. They're not going to be nearly as good as UCLA. They're not a team that you should be too terribly concerned about, to be honest. And as good as I expect UCLA to be, this is a game they have to get a win in. I fully expect them to win by a pretty decent margin. I'm going to go with UCLA in that one. Then they play Washington on a Friday, so they get a short week heading into that one, and they get them at home, but Washington is a team that is definitely good enough to give UCLA some trouble. It's going to be a big game. Like I said, they get a short week heading into it. They're coming off of a road trip from Colorado, so there's some travel to be accounted for in that as well. And so even though they do get them at home here, it's one I'm very concerned about for UCLA, and it's definitely one that I think they may struggle in. I'm actually going to go with Washington to get a win here. I think it's a little bit of an upset because I do think UCLA is a slightly better team just overall than Washington, but they're close enough that this game is almost a 50-50, one that could go either way. Probably one that UCLA will be favored in, probably should be favored in. Still going to pick Washington to get somewhat of a surprise win there. I think it's a game where you can see UCLA's, a little bit of inconsistency, some of their question areas, especially in the defensive side, really rear their head here. Then, though, because they got a short week the week before, they get a long week heading into the Utah game, and they get Utah at home. Now, Utah, I think, is probably the best team in the conference, but they're not better than UCLA by a huge margin. UCLA is certainly going to be competitive in this game, and it's a game that they could absolutely win. I think Utah will probably be a slight favorite here, but I think that UCLA, being the home team, getting the extra day, the little long week of preparation there, and I think Chip Kelly's going to have some surprises in store, we'll say, for Utah here. I think UCLA gets a big upset win there against Utah. I don't know if it's really a huge upset, but I think as far as its impact on the conference, it is certainly going to be a huge game. So I think they get a very big win there before heading into the bye week. Now, coming out of the bye week, they go on the road at Oregon, and this is one where if they can find a way to win, things are looking really, really good for them. And they are, like I said, coming off of a bye. So that's in their advantage. Now, I think Oregon is a better team than them, similar to Utah. I think they're a slightly better team than them, but it's not by a huge margin. But Oregon is also at home. And With them being the home team plus a slightly better team, I know UCLA is coming off a bye, but I gave them the benefit of the doubt against Utah. I don't think I can do it here against Oregon. I think Oregon gets a big win there against UCLA. And honestly, this year in the Pac-12, I think some of your top 3 or 4 teams may kind of cannibalize each other to some extent, and each of them take one game off the other kind of thing. So I'm going to go with Oregon to win there at home. They follow that up with playing Stanford also, well, not also, but this one UCLA gets to be the home team for. And Stanford is not a team to take lightly necessarily, but also they're one of your mid to lower level teams in the conference this upcoming year. They're not the same Stanford that they were a few years ago. And I think they're gonna be improved this year, but I think they're still gonna struggle. UCLA should be favored in this game, and they really should win this game by a pretty decent margin. I'm gonna go with UCLA in that one. They follow that up with going on the road at Arizona State, and this is one that could be a sneakily tough game for them. That's not a very easy place to play. At least they get them late in the season, though. And UCLA, better roster than Arizona State, much more continuity around the team, much less drama and transfer portal stuff going on. So one that I think they'll be favored in, one that they should win. I'm going to pick them to win. But one to keep an eye on. Could be a little bit of a trap game. Definitely one that you don't want to get too cocky heading into. Arizona State is certainly capable of winning that one. Then they get Arizona at home. And, it's nice to get probably the worst team in the conference, especially when you get them at home there. That's one where, barring some sort of catastrophe, honestly, UCLA should be just fine. Arizona is not going to be good enough to really compete too much with UCLA, in my opinion, unless they just absolutely come out and play terribly. So, going to go with UCLA in that one. And then you get one of the other biggest games on the schedule, and that is when they host USC. Now, USC, very interesting team. They got Lincoln Riley out there, and they've got Caleb Williams and Jordan Addison and a bunch of other receiver talent. Their offense is going to be very high-powered. They're going to be a very good team, but they, similar to UCLA in some ways, have a lot of questions on defense, and they have questions along their lines of scrimmage as well. So this is one that I think is really evenly matched. UCLA is the home team. I do think that USC's offense is going to be a little bit better than UCLA's. I think USC has the better quarterback in this one. So I'm going to go with USC to get the win, but don't count UCLA out in that one. Definitely a huge game at the end of the season that could determine a lot for the Pac-12. Going to go with USC, though. Still a very interesting game to keep an eye on. And then they end the year on a Friday at Cal, and they're coming off a tough game, and they're going on the road that is on a Friday, so there's some things kind of lining up against them there. But they are a better team than Cal at this point. They're a better roster. I think they're, at this point, probably better coached, and they have more talent. It's not an easy game by any means. It's one that Cal could certainly compete in and hang around, but I'm going to go with UCLA to get the win. I think they are just a better team across the board, and as long as they aren't in complete letdown mode coming off that USC game, I think they'll be just fine and get a win there to round out the season. So that would make UCLA 9-3 on the year, which is a really strong record for them under Chip Kelly, and it puts them in position to potentially contend for the Pac-12 title game this year, which would be a huge step in the right direction. Now, if they can find a way to pull off a big upset over Oregon or USC in addition to that Utah upset that I've picked for them, then things can climb into that 10-win range, but that is a tall task. I mean, it would require multiple upsets, which is not the question, but I still think they only get the one over Utah. I think of the Oregon, USC, Utah, they probably get one of them, to be honest. Now, if they can get two, though, they get to that 10-win range, and they're probably a lock to make the conference title at that point. Now, if things go poorly for them, they drop that Utah game like I had instead of me having them upsetting them, lose a couple other ones along the way. Maybe they lose to an Arizona State or lose to Cal or something like that. Then, you could see a 7-5 or an 8-4 type of season as well. To me, that would assume some things don't go their way. That assumes they have some bumps in the road and they lose some games they should win, which is very possible. I mean, teams do that every single year, but I think they're going to do a little bit better than that. But honestly, anything between 7 and 9 wins is reasonable, in my opinion, for UCLA this year. I expect them to take a big step forward next year and really as a program as a whole heading into the near future. Before now, they're going to be joining the Big Ten soon, so that'll be interesting to see how that works out in the years to come. Anyway, though, that'll do it for this one. Let me know down below in the comment section where you guys agree and or disagree with me on the UCLA schedule in 2022. Tell me what record you think they're going to have next year and who, if anybody, they're going to lose to. Also, if you've made it this far in the video, be sure to leave a like because it does help out the channel tremendously. Lets me know you're enjoying this kind of content. And subscribe for more college football content in the future. I have done videos now on the entirety of the SEC, the ACC, and the Big 12. I'm over halfway done with the Pac-12, and then I'm moving on to the Big 10 right after that. So be on the lookout for the stuff to come in the future. Check out some of the older stuff if you haven't. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.